Everybody is doing well this afternoon. In off today, the water for a little while this morning. Fall fishing is in full swing. The mornings are very cold. That is why I'm enjoying my trusty friends here locally. Mayorga Organics, love their coffee. Mayan Blend is thus far my favorite. Thanks, guys, on the coffee for us in the morning. Upper Potomac, levels are back down. Edwards Ferry below 4 feet. Point of Rocks back down to a foot and a half. I'm gonna tell you what. Yeah, make sure you warm up a little bit if you're in your waders and you're wade fishing at Point of Rocks in 1.5 feet of water. That water temperature has dropped on the upper P, otherwise known as the up. And what that also means is the biggins are chewing, and you can see that all over if you just kind of chew into the group page or guide pages. If you're dialed into that, you're seeing the 20s. You're seeing some 19s, 20s, and 21 smallmouths that people tell you don't live in the upper Potomac down below Brunswick area and all the way down from Brunswick down to Seneca and on down to Little Falls. Man, they do. Them biggins just don't, maybe they just don't come out during the summer. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it. But in the fall, that is when the big fish in these parts are caught in the upper Potomac. I don't know what happens, really, to tell you the truth, with the largies down in the tidal. I know in the Northeast, as in Upper Chesapeake Bay, Northeast, out of Anchorage Marina, they're freaking catching biggins. Sometimes the bite just gets turned on, and they feed up. I mean, I don't know, how else other to explain it. So some places could be freaking just the Dead Sea, and other places are just, guys are just catching, big largemouth and big smallmouth. And also right now, Upper James, even in the Upper Potomac, people are getting these nice sized muskies, man. That's the time of the year. It's an awesome, awesome time. Muskie trip, Blue Ridge Muskie, Sam Scott. That's a bucket list trip for you mates. If anybody's in the region, for muskie this time of year, if you want to add that to your bucket list. I'm going to put that guide list together in the private group for everybody. It's in there now, but I didn't list the phone numbers. I apologize. I'll list the phone numbers for Maury River Smallmouth. That's Jamie Childress. Shallow Water Fishing Adventures, Jeff Green. National Bass Guide Service, Steve Chicanis. In Old Dominion and a bunch down there, and kind of what their specialty is. And when I talk about to a lot of folks that call me, I get a lot of calls about guides and just stuff. And I try to walk people through about what their intentionality is. Okay. I mean, what is your real intentionality for going with a guide? Obviously it's to get put on fish, right? But from holistic angling approach, you want it to be more than that. You could pay somebody money and have you have them put you on their honey hole and put you on, that happens everywhere. But what you also want to do is kind of call the guides and kind of find out, how do you fish? How do you plan on fishing next week when I go, or 2 weeks, or summer, fall transition, spring spawn? Like, what techniques are you going to use? And what I try to do, and I'm going to try and do in that private group, is kind of like things that I know about these guides, from others, for people that have gone on their trips, from me texting with them, is how they like to fish. So like, and where your struggles are. Because I know a lot of people will hit up me from the YouTube channel about baits, about techniques, about, hey man, can you walk me through what you were talking about the jerk bait? I'm moving from a boat to a kayak, and I used to be able to catch bass from the boat with my jerkbait, but I can't with my kayak, and all that is physics and science. Okay, that's all it is. It's not, and we go through that, and you're sitting lower in a kayak than you are in a boat. It's just simple math. We hate math, we hate science, but that's what it is. And so you have to adjust some things. So tube fishing, a lot of people struggle with tube fishing. If you're going to fish for smallies in the region, pick up that technique, because it's going to be highly effective. So go out with a guide like Jeff Green, who can show you for 6 hours how to tube fish, and then you're solid. Then just go out and apply it. Steve Chicanis, drop shot. Show you how to catch largemouth bass in the tidal Potomac on a drop shot. Or spinnerbait. Like that. I mean, that's what you want to do. You just don't want to show up and just fish. you know, unless that's what you want to do. And some people do that. Like out-of-towners, a lot of people just coming into town, want something to do. They're visiting family. Let's go on a guide trip for 4 hours or whatever. And there's no other intentionality other than just catch fish. So that's fine. So we're going to talk about, I talked about that and go in the private group, and then I'll plug in those numbers for that so you guys can see that in the private group and load it all up, because it's kind of apparent. I mean, this time of year is a really great year to be on the water, especially if you're smallmouth fishing and you want to catch a personal best river smallie. And I'll be out again. So because we've got these water levels coming down, like I said, Edwards Ferry below 4 feet, and then Point of Rocks, and then down below on your way to Old Dam 2, below Seneca, below Riley's Lock. It's even lower in parts down near Swain's Lock, and on your way down towards the Virginia ramps. Remember, you've got your Maryland ramps and you've got your Virginia ramps. And a lot of people don't focus at all on that section. Okay. Maybe not their poison. They always start with like where the boats go, right? The boats go all up. The boats can't go down that way towards Little Falls. Okay. And so the jet boats all go up out of Seneca and all run all the way up, right? As far as they want to go and can go. The jet boats can go in a lot of shallow water. But they don't really focus on a lot of the kayak side. Like, okay, a lot more of the people are kayaking, from Landers down to Point of Rocks, from in and around Point of Rocks. Then maybe the float trips go from Brunswick down to Landers, or from, Landers down to Point of Rocks, or Brunswick to Point of Rocks. It's a longer float. And then people will put in it at, Riley's and above, and kayak in and around the Old Dam area, and then Pennyfield, and then Swansea all the way down. You got on the Virginia side, you also have like 2 ramps over there. So it's a lot more kayaking and canoeing. And a lot of people don't cover that section because it's not really guided. It's not guided because it's boats aren't on it, right? And right as it stands right now, but next year, I think you're going to see kayak guide trips. And, just a prediction. You're going to see kayak guide trips on that section of the river, okay, for people to take to experience and have fun, and do that. So another update, walleye cheaters had their boat seized in Ohio from the Ohio Game, as well as Mercer County in Ohio. And there's also another county looking into those guys for a tournament that took place in their county back in April, I think. So you now have a $60,000 boat seized from their garage by officials via search warrant, both the Ohio Game and Mercer County. And then you also now have another county that was the site of the previous event opening up an investigation into the 2 gentlemen that were suspected of cheating in that event as well. So there's your update on the walleye fishing scandal. Next up, really, whole lot of, little stuff piecing together. It's one of those time frames where you're kind of in between everything. You got 1 week away. Next Wednesday, the Kayak Bass Fishing National Championship cast in. Next week, I believe Wednesday morning, the event kicks off on Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley for the KBF National Championship. And so it's an interesting thing. I think I'm trying to pull it up. 255 anglers so far registered for the KBF National Championship. And that registration ends on 2 days from now, I think. I think it ends on the 14th. The early registration expired on the September 30th, and the late registration, it's extra $100. So you have until the 14th to register for the Kayak Bass Fishing National Championship. The National Championship's $400 after September 30th. The Trail Series Championship is still $150. Challenge Series Championship still $115, I believe, and the Team Cup. A Team Cup is very, very interesting, mates. If you check that Team Cup out, you can see some hammers from the kayak fishing community on various teams and brands that are supporting, sponsoring those teams. I would imagine a lot of them are already on. A lot of them are already sponsored by like Dakota Lithium, Yak Attack, things like that. They're already sponsored throughout the year for most of these Old Town, for most of these anglers, I would assume, in some form or fashion. And so they're putting in a team format. KBF is supposed to be offering this team format, I believe. They'll expand on what they're going to be doing next year with that. And this is something that's going to really, really take off. And, the first one through the door was the Kayak Fishing Series, with teams, and you get bloodied. First one through the door always gets bloodied. And every trail goes through its growing pains. But you know what? They identified a niche, they identified an interest, they identified, demand. And that's just business. And so you're going to get competition. And so now if you're going to get competition, you got to elevate your game. I mean, that's how it works in the real world. And so it's going to be very interesting to see now whether these sponsorships for the Team Cup teams will then be translatable to a new series, a new team concept, a new team format, whether it be 2 anglers per team or 4. In the future, I kind of lean towards the 2 myself, just because I think it's easier to manage 2 anglers than 4. Putting pairs together, you and your buddy form a team. You've got a sponsor. You're sponsored by XYZ. You're sponsored by a big company. You're sponsored by, a kayak, whatever it is. I just think that might be a little easier than, say, 4, and then you deal with all the other. You don't have to deal with all the other, aspects that we've seen in the last few years about trying to make something, marketable. It's just 2 guys on a team, or 4 guys on a team from an ambassador, KBF club or whatever. You know what I mean? They're going to send. So it's different. Like the ambassador club can send teams. We're seeing that for the Team Cup, right? Next year. But it would be great to see an actual monthly or actual events while KBF is doing its events. Like, if it's got a trail series stop in Lake Murray and guys are going to pay, right, to fish as individuals. I mean, it just makes perfect business sense to me to freaking add on another $150 or $200 to fish in a team side pot, a team concept. They're already there. They're already fishing. You know what I'm saying? And guys can get in, sort of like linking up. I've said this before, and I know a lot of people are like, you're conflating things, Jay. That's the boating world. Let's face it. Most people in the kayak fishing community, unlike the boating community, most people in the kayak fishing community follow the boating community, okay? Follow the boating community. Like all the trails, everything they're doing, all their payouts, and we're going to get into that in a second, all that stuff that's happening. Why? Because if you showed up and knocked on a guy's door and you presented, here's a Phoenix bass boat, go and fish in the BFLs, go and fish in the Bass Opens, go and fish in the MLF, Toyota Series, whatever. Every single one of us would do it. That's the difference. Okay? And that's just the reality that people need to face. Like, they show up at your door with a kayak to someone. Not all boaters are going to want to, okay, I'm not going to fish in a kayak tournament. Okay? That's the difference. Okay? And so, people don't like to talk about that, but at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to get moved. A lot of these, people are going to go and fish. We've seen it. We've seen top kayak anglers co-angle in boater series. Okay. That's just the nature of it. I mean, boating has been around for so much longer. There's so many more opportunities. The payouts are bigger and greater. And for now, we're going to see what happens. And so there are people who make that transition back. You got Mike Iaconelli coming back in the kayak side a lot. Making his presence known in kayaking from the boating community. There will be more, but it's not as big going from boater to kayak competitively yet. But it might, because the entry fees for going into BASS and MLF payouts are going down, okay, as a percentage of entry, okay, and entry fees appear to be going up, even though someone kind of argued they're not going up, but you're limiting the number of events and you're increasing your payout, and so who knows what's going to happen, how that's going to impact the kayak. So it's good that these team series now are starting to kind of come to fruition for a little bit. You had the MLF just complete filming its team series, okay, which is incredibly interesting. I think it's going to air, I think the January 1st. I think it's going to air on New Year's Day. So it's the General Tire Team Series, okay, and it's three MLF anglers per team, okay. And they did a little prototype this last year, so now it's kind of like they're rolling, okay, and it's been done. And I'm trying to figure. Let me see if I can pull up for you guys. It's 27 3-man teams. The series is going to feature 27 3-man teams competing over 3 qualifying events. Each qualifying event will feature 9 teams divided into 3 groups. Each group competition will feature 3 teams competing over 2 days to accumulate the highest 2-day total, sort of like a regular event. The group runners, 3 teams for each qualifying event, will advance to the General Tire Team Championship, which will showcase 9 winning teams competing for $300,000. Okay. So the first qualifying event, September 26th to October 1st, filmed. October 10th to 15th, filmed. Okay, coming up. Qualifying event, November 8th to 13th, and the General Tire Championship, December 5th through 21. So there you have that. The winning 3-man team in the General Tire Championship will claim the $300,000 top prize. Second place team will earn $60,000, and the third place team will earn $30,000. Teams 4th through 9th in the championship will each earn $15,000. So your teams, that gets kind of like unbelievable. Like in terms of even have the boater side going to that concept, okay, of teams. So 9 teams. Team B&W Hitch Trailers, Mark Davis, Gary Klein, Cliff Pace. Team Builders Fit Source, Stephen Browning, Jeff Crete, Timmy Horton. Team Crockett's Creek, Jacob Wheeler, damn. Dylan Hayes, Jason Lambert. Team Ferguson, I'm assuming that's Ferguson as in Ferguson Air Conditioning. Fukai Fletcher Kayak, Marty Robinson. Team Fox Rental Car, James Edom, Brent Chapman, Jonathan Van Dam. Team Knightston Industries, Wesley Stretter, Scott Shrugs, Mike McClellan. Team Kubota, Vincent, Roy, Salzman. Team Smoky Mountain, Bertrand, Andy Morgan. Jeez, Brandon Gold. Team Starbright, Alton Jones Jr., Myers, and Roy Hawk. Those are the teams, man. Like, so this team thing is kind of spreading in the fishing community. So now it's going to be coming under a lot more scrutiny. All right. Payouts. Like I got a message about what the payout was going to be for the kayak team series. I was like, I have no idea. I mean, I think they published the percentages, but no one knows what the starting amount is. If it's 50,000 and the winner gets 30%, 40%, or if it's 60,000, 70,000, and the winner gets, the percentages are out there circulating on social media, but the actual dollar sign figures, I think it was alluded to that, it hasn't really been determined or published, and only like a few people know what it is. I don't really like that kind of thing. I mean, I like MLF, I like Bass. They tell you, okay? And you can say whatever you want about Bass and MLS. I mean, MLF, but MLS, I'm thinking soccer because that's coming up. What the payouts are, and that's what all the discussions going on in the boater community right now. It just really is like payout. What am I going to fish MLF invitationals? Am I going to fish Bass Opens? If you're co-anglers, I get inundated with a bunch of co-anglers are like, man, seriously, show us some love, show us some respect. Because I mean, as a co-angler, what do you get in the Bass Opens now? No one really knows. I mean, you get the experience of fishing with top flight anglers, right? I mean, guys that are, pretty close to the next level, used to be competing for the top 3 spots in each division, right? And so you get a lot of experience, but what? There's no championship, right? That's what's going to happen. Like, in that regard for bass. And then you look at the MLFs. There, you know what? I got to be honest with you. If you listen to people, you know how sometimes people like put stuff out there before they actually do anything? There's a chance there may not be any co-anglers in the Bass Opens. I mean, like, I don't know what that chance is, but there's talking about it going from 1,800 to 2,500, right? Making that increase because they know, I think they know they're not going to get 220, whatever it is, anglers to sign on for 9 events for next year because of the economy. I just think they know that. I think they're making these changes because they know it's going to happen in the economy. And so when the MLF does that and the Bass does that, it trickles down, right? So guys have getting invites already, right? But they have to make the decisions whether or not they want to pay $5,000, okay, to fish in events, or $1,800 as it stood in the Bass Opens. But there is kind of talk that maybe the Bass Opens is going to go to 2,500. So the question is, okay, payouts are kind of payouts, right? Like, we know what the payouts have been for a lot of these organizations because people have just done the math. I mean, podcasters have done the math, or they just come clean, right? And release that information. So the Bass Opens have been a 71% payout. Okay. So, people have a problem with that. People think that's too low. Okay. And now MLF is dropping to an 82% payout for the MLF invitation. Remember, the MLF invitation is now replacing the pro circuit in MLF. Okay. And people have a problem with that. It's like, what don't you have a problem with? Like that. I mean, from the outside looking in, you're like, wait, you got to remember, they lost money. Okay. They lost money on the pro circuit. Remember, the pro circuit came from the FLW days. Okay. It's the last remnants of the FLW when MLF took over FLW. Okay. So to get those anglers that have fished with FLW for a while. Okay. And I get it, but they lost money. They were paying out almost 110% every event. They were losing money every single event for the pro circuit, mates. Like, that's not sustainable. Okay. And a lot of the people fishing in it knew that they were losing money every single event and didn't really like there's a mentality there that, like, you want to make sure that you are in something, right? You're in something that's going to have sustainability and last. Okay. But there have been a lot of changes that people are like, man, things are just changing so much. But part of that is getting into the right balance to where there will actually be a tour, okay, an actual invitational replacing the pro circuit for the next 5 to 10 years. You can't get that way if you're paying out 109, 110% every event after event after event, year after year after year. You're siphoning money from other things, right? Like, there are series. I think the Toyota series is profitable. So I don't think MLF is losing money, boom, but when you're a business, you've got to look at that. So sometimes a lot of people lose sight of that fact. That, like, look, now, 82% payout. Like, I know in the kayak community, you figure if an event charges $265 for 200 anglers to fish in it, that's about $53,000 that event is taking in entry fees. How much of it are they paying out in comparison to boaters? So I don't know. I think the winner gets 10 grand, and then 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 2, 209. I don't know. Like, it's like, okay, so 10, 11, 12, some of it's predicated on the number of anglers that participate. But if a max event is 200, I mean, you can easily go back and look and see what the check was for the first place guy in a major kayaking event and see what the payout is. Is the payout greater or less in kayaking as in boating? That will be a question for people. In bad economy, in the economy, like people may start to fish more kayak events because if I only got to pay $265 to fish for 2 days and I got a shot at 10, 11, 12, 13 grand, okay, versus paying $1,800 to fish for 3 days and have really no shot at what? Okay, against 225 anglers squeezed on small ass lakes sometimes or bodies of water. And you're asking people to compete. You're asking boaters to compete like that so they can elevate to EQ, right? The Elite Series, where the Elite Series has far less anglers competing in it than the Opens did the last few years. So it's kind of like not really apples and apples. I mean, you're asking a guy to go out and compete against 225 anglers on a smallish bodies of water, okay, for the last few whatever, to qualify. Back then, you just had to play in your division, fish 3 events. Now you have to fish 9 events, okay? Against, I don't think it's going to be 225 to fish 9 myself at this point, not because of the anglers. I think every angler would want to fish 9 and have a shot to get into the Bassmaster Classic. Who wouldn't? I just think the economy. Sponsors are tightening up. You're hearing it everywhere. Okay? A lot of the other second-tier, third-tier sponsors are puckering up, right? Because they see what the headwind is in this economy. Look, I very rarely try to bring politics into my feeds, okay? Because I know they're divisive and things are tribal and that's just the way it is. But you just had the president go on in some interview say that we're not in a recession. Like, that's all I'm going to say about that. Like, hello. Like, that's a Washington bubble right there. Because it sure as hell feels like one. And everybody's pinching pennies. And anyone who's got to fill up their gas in their truck for the last 6 months to 8 or, this year completely. Insurance is going up. What's your insurance? Have you checked the insurance? The insurance on your truck and the insurance on your boat, trailer, all that coming up. Expect about a 3 to 5% increase, mates. That's what I'm hearing for the next Q1 of 2023. So get that guy on the phone. Get your insurance agent on the phone. Oh, man, and get something done now. Okay? Renewal now, even if it's not time to renew. And renew now at the rates now, my opinion. Already happening on this end. Okay? Cars, trucks, boats, whatever. All that stuff's going to go up, mate. So, that's that. So, you're looking at you have to make that decision. Anglers have got to make that decision. And it's going to be a lot of movement happening because you're looking at if they raise the Opens to $2,500 an angler, they will have captured $700 more than they did this year. Well, they could actually wipe out the co-anglers because the co-anglers have been paying about $450, $475, I think, per event. So they're gone. They can remove them and then just flip the bill over to the boater. And the boater's done with having co-anglers. And they're going to make the same amount of money as if they would have if they actually had co-anglers. So that sucks if you're a co-angler. That's going to push those co-anglers out of bass, maybe for good. You don't really know. Sometimes when you piss people off, they could move over to MLF and just be like Toyota Sears or whatever it is, be a co-angler, BFL, co-angler, work their way up, try and get into the MLF Invitational, then trying to get to Red Crest, then try to get to the epitome of MLF and just be like, you know what? I'm done with bass. I'm not going back. That's the risk you run when you make a change like that. Okay? Why do people co-angle? Usually people co-angle because they're younger and they can't afford or don't live in an area or to store a boat, can't afford to buy a boat, aren't ready for that responsibility. All number of reasons factor in towards why someone co-angles. Okay? Versus entering as a boater. There are plenty of people who own boats who enter in as co-anglers just because for fun and for the experience, and they don't have to pay $1,800 to fish in that event, right? So those are your opens. So the 9 opens for MLF, okay? You follow Toledo Bend, Bugs Island. That's I hate that place. It's a good fishery though. It's a good fishery. I just never had success on there. Wheeler, Eufaula, Oklahoma, St. Lawrence. That's deep up New York, not Lake Ontario, by the way. Watts Bar, in the fall, Watts Bar in the fall-ish, Lake Ozarks, and then ending the Open Series. The 9th event would be in the Harris Chain in October. The invitationals for MLF. Okeechobee, Clarkson, Georgia, Eufaula, Oklahoma, Ozarks. So Eufaula and Ozarks are in both. Potomac River, okay? Mississippi River, La Crosse, Wisconsin. Interesting. I mean, so those are your 2 right there where people have got to decide what they want to do, with $5,000, $1,800, or $25,000. Have to fish all 9 at $1,800 or $25,000, or fish the invitationals, or try and work it out where you can fish both, I guess, depending on, what you're looking at. And I don't know whether or not you can jackpot shit. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be. I don't kind of like that. I think like some of those things have to change a little bit, because I think in the kayak series, you can fish one. You can jackpot an event and get into the championship. I think if you win an event, correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But if you win an event in Hobie, I think you automatically get in their TOC in November on the 11th this year, which is in Caddo and Shreveport. So you can jackpot, only fish one event, win it, and get into the Tournament of Champions to pay out $100,000 or so. I would look at that. I don't know. I don't know how everyone else feels about that. To me, it's kind of weird. I know that some events have their top 3 automatically get berths, and it's how they fill the field out. And then there's the AOY anglers that get into these things. I guess for bass and for Hobie. KBF doesn't do it that way, I don't think. In a sense, like people can fish this one as opposed to qualifying through the actual trail during the year. So that's interesting, man, because jackpotting does become a big issue. Like, for people who fish their own home body of water that they know really well against everybody else who's fishing all the other events, coming in town, boom, they win it. They're done. No one ever sees them again until the tournament, until the finals or the end of the championship or whatever. I don't know what the consensus is of feelings like that. I kind of don't like that. I feel like you should have to at least fish a minimum. I know most local trails in the boater community and in the local clubs in the boater community and local kayak clubs, you have to fish at least like 3, a minimum, But, each his own. Everyone runs their own series is different. And plus the MLF Invitational is capped at 150 anglers. Okay, so you're competing against 150 anglers versus potentially 225 in the opens. And the payout's 82% versus right now the payout's 71% for the opens. I mean, so people got to balance that all out. Look at map it all out on their map. I know people are doing that right now, mapping it out. I got a map in the other room that's got like a little thumbtack on the events to determine like what is it going to be? What would it be to pay to travel when you're going from Florida, New York, Oklahoma, right? Like what's that going to be like? I mean, and especially if you don't have sponsors. And a lot of those guys at that level, open level and bass, do not have major sponsors. They don't. And so that's that. KBF Kentucky Lake. What's going on with Kentucky Lake? Well, mates, right now, Kentucky Lake is a little warmer than it's going to be next week for the KBF National Championship. They're experiencing their mid-October Autumn, of course. They haven't had a lot of rain at all. The pool, the water levels are consistent. So they don't have any water level impact right now going into the KBF National Championship. Temperatures have been pretty much mild. It looks like no rain. They've had some wind. Yeah, water level 354.8, which is normal. That's the normal stage. So the mornings last week into this week have been starting out at about like upper 50s, 60 degrees in the mornings. Okay. Getting into the 80s. That's probably not going to happen next week at the time the KBF rolls out and starts. It's probably going to be more like lower 50s, upper 40s maybe, into the 70s. Right? Is that what the weather pattern's looking like? Yeah, that's what it looks like. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see the change for people that are going to pre-fish up at Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley, because you're looking at something completely different, potentially completely different. And that happens all terms. A buddy told me yesterday that, like, I didn't even realize this. You can't be pre-fishing right now for Hobie's Tournament of Champions. That their deadline was October 1st. So you can't even be on the water in any capacity whatsoever. That you're only allowed to like look for like launching areas, but you can't bank fish, you can't fish from a dock, you can't be out on a boat, you can't be out on a kayak, you can't be out on the water at all. I don't think the TOC is until November 11th. Like almost 40 days, more than 40 days, you're not allowed to be on that body of water. I mean, more than that. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of time frame. So, but they get that provides a little bit of intrigue to that event. Makes that event a little bit more special. I mean, like, you're just dropping all 50, I think, dropping them on that body of water. So when you're going to Kentucky Lake, I know I got a ton of messages for people. I have stayed at Kentucky Lake. I've stayed at Barkley, Piney Campground, State Park. Okay, the list goes on. But I wanted to just reiterate to a couple of people. Eats Perry's Barbecue. Okay, Paris, Tennessee. Just check them out. If you're staying a little bit further north towards Kentucky, in Benton, you guys know that Benton is it's fishing headquarter USA. Okay, if you think about it, I actually believe MLF is moving something there from Tulsa. So they've had stuff there already, but you know what I mean. Hutchins Barbecue there, Perry's Barbecue in Paris, Tennessee. You're not gonna be able to go wrong. You also got JoJo's. Check out JoJo's in Benton. If you're up that, remember, depending on where you are, it's a big ass lake. Remember, I told you guys in the other video, this is the largest body of water if you include Kentucky Lake and Barkley together as if they were one lake, because you could fish both, between Canada and the Gulf of Mexico in that central part of the country. It's enormous. And so you've got, if you're staying in Paris, like the check-in, here's my advice. The check-in and all that stuff, I believe, is going to be happening in Paris, Tennessee. You're going to have to go to a captain's meeting in Paris, Tennessee. I believe at the convention center. You probably could find all that out on the Fin Chaos page on Tuesday night, I think, before Wednesday. There's also another mini meetup captain's meeting if you couldn't make the captain's meeting, I think, like 4 a.m. or something. But you got Perry's Barbecue in Paris. You've got Southside Cafe. That's Highway 69. Ann and Dave's Kitchen. Okay. This is all fisherman food. Okay. Sitting bougie foo-foo-y. You want some 5-star joint, go look on freaking Yelp or TripAdvisor. Okay. I'm talking about like comfort food, fill you up for the day on the water or after the water. Okay. To replenish your soul. Okay. Is what I'm talking about. If you want some beer, you got to check and see, because these craft breweries in all these different states have all kinds of different operating hours because of the laws, alcohol, depending on where you are. Perilogic, okay, brewing. That is that's Jonathan Lodge and Randall Perry. They make good beer, baby. They make good beer. If you like craft beer, if you're not into that thing, if that's not your poison, that's fine. But you can still go there, you know, and have a good time, meet up with the mates. It's a perfect place to go meet up with people. You know, and then you got Take Me Back Cafe, baby. Take Me Back Cafe. Okay. There is your breakfast diner extraordinaire. Okay. Those are the places. There's plenty more. Just message me. I'll email you. I'm sure I left off a few. I'd have to go back and check. But there's just tons of places, man. It's just a really, really, like, you know, comfort food, you name it, what you want. Like, doesn't really matter, from barbecue to ribs to chicken and biscuits to just, you name it, cornbread. It's just, you can get it all there. And replenished, especially this time of year. It's October. It's going to be a little bit chillier. You know, all that's going to happen. And it looks like it's only about 250 now, 255, like I said. Thought we'd get to 300. Hopefully we still can get to 300. Got 2 more days to register up for that. I know a lot of people like to wait for the last minute, typically in the community. I think the community needs to address that. I mean, because that gets kind of, you know, a lot of people just waiting to the last day. A lot of it has to do with money, resources, but I just think there needs to be a pathway. There needs to be an easier way for people to link together or people to register for these events ahead of time, lock their spots in, you know, in some way. The same way in boater side, a co-angler can link with a boater at the beginning of the season in December and lock their spots in for events in the spring and summer and so forth. I just think the kayak community needs to embrace that because it works. And plus it should give them a lot more, you know, knowledge on numbers. Remember, KBF, if I'm not mistaken, KBF held 17 events in 2022. 17. Okay? In its trail series. 17. And it's dropping to 9, I believe, in 2023. Hobie is supposedly rumored. Hobie may be adding events, so maybe they go to 10. Hobie was Toledo Bend, Santee Cooper, Lake Eufaula, Broken Bow, Chickamauga, of course, Winnipesaukee, Susquehanna, Wolf Fox, and Dardanelle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So then we go into 10, adding one more maybe. Maybe they get it. I don't know. They haven't released their schedule yet. You know, I'm just interested to see Hobie. I'll be honest with you. Love the trail. Love everything, you know, how they run that organization. That Winnipesaukee event that they had in the Northeast, if you go on the Angler of the Year race by AFCO, I think only 2, maybe 3 of the top 12 to 15 anglers in the AOI race fished Winnipesaukee. That may factor into whether or not any events get scheduled in the Northeast or above Susquehanna. I kind of think they'll come back to Susquehanna. It's always their best event. It's like a signature event in terms of catches, in terms of participation. They sell out. That may be as far north as they, in the East Coast anyway. That may be as far north as they go. I mean, when only 3 of your top 12 to 15 in your angle AOI even fished the event this year, okay, that tells you that and where those guys are from, usually the South, they're not going to drive all the way to New Hampshire, let alone Maine. So I'd be really, really interested to see where it drops with that for 2023. Again, the rumor is they're going to add an event, but they can add that event in the South. They've been criticized by a lot of folks. I get it from a business standpoint. That's your base. All their events are kind of centered around the Tennessee Valley and, you know, in the South. They do have a couple, like they did go to Wisconsin and for lacrosse last year, I think, and Fox River this year. And they did go to Winnipesaukee, and, you know, and they go to Texas a lot. So this year, I believe they're going to Hartwell, not Santee Cooper. I think they made that known early on that they're going to try and flip them. So it will be interesting to see. I've said before, I would like for these guys, KBF or Hobie, Bass, to do like Falls or Jordan or Norm, something in North Carolina. There are so many anglers in North Carolina and in Virginia, and KBF does Potomac, for sure. But I mean, there's so many bodies of water in that Virginia, North Carolina, northwestern South Carolina, area. It just gets overlooked by a lot of these national kayak trails. Seems to me anyway. I don't think KBF had any. The KBF had Percy in Tennessee, Laurel in Kentucky. But yeah, I don't. Murray in South Carolina, which is further down. So there's just so many bodies of water right there in that Raleigh. They call it Research Triangle area, right? Going up, into Virginia and up to Virginia. You got Gaston and Smith Mountain Lake and Kerr, Bugs Island, and there's just so many. And it just get a permitting thing. I don't know if that's just they can't get a local organization to support them. But even Bass's Lake Fork, Harris Chain, Pickwick, Grand Lake, Lewis Smith, Russell, that's pretty much just the southeast and south. So, I mean, there's a lot of rumors that they're gonna make a push in 2023. I don't know what that means at this point. We'll have to wait and see. We'll get a very good indication when they drop their schedule for Bass Nation Kayak Series for 2023, really what their intentionality really is, if they are serious about, creating a professional bass kayak trail. They have the experience, they have the resources, they have the connections, they have the relationships at most of these lakes that they've been fishing at my whole entire life, to do that if they want. And the reality of it is that a lot of people do not talk about. I talk about it because I approach things from the small business side. I approach things from understanding business moves, not necessarily looking at it from the prism of just as a fisherman or is whether or not they believe that there's growth in kayak fishing tournaments or not. If they believe that there was growth, massive growth potential continuing in the kayak space, you would think that Bass would, in fact, double down in investment, right? That's just logical. But they haven't yet. So we'll see if they've got the money, one would think, okay? If everybody else starts to downsize, like KBF is going from 17 to 9 because of the economy, and they want to concentrate on, on getting things back and getting back to way pre-COVID and just rebuilding again and getting all their ducks in a row to move them forward. Is this a time for Bass to throw more money in and expand and upgrade and really, really, really get out there and market and market and market? A lot of people do not like the process for Bass. And that's something Bass has to take a look at. Like, no one wants to have to get an email back and then this back and then that back. And the registration is just kind of wonky, like from what people tell me, okay? For a lot of people tell me. It's not as fluid, not as smooth as it is for other things, like, just pay your money to Fishing Chaos, pay your money to Tourney X. There's reasons why Bass, I assume, does that. I don't know why. Someone will have to enlighten me as to why that is. But you constantly hear people complaining about that aspect. I didn't hear this. How do I know if I'm, or haven't gotten an email back or whatever. So, a top-notch organization like that can dial that in and figure that out. As well as schedule some kick-ass freaking fisheries. Like, the Bassmaster magazine released a top 100. Like, they've already done all the work. So now it's just like, okay, permitting, okay, relationships with local, right? And even if bass fishing is their priority, boater side, I think you actually focus on certain bodies of water in our country that set up so well for kayaking that are not going to be fished by 200 boaters. They're not. They're not set up that way. Okay, they're not. So why not do that? Why not establish those relationships with those smaller size lakes under their minimum threshold for boaters, and just focus on those. We're constantly seeing these events schedule big boat fisheries. Why? Like, they already have the relationships with the people because they're used to sending boaters there. That's a logical explanation that they will give you. People will talk about. But from people who are kayaking's perspective, what is that about? Is it playing off our ego, playing off our desire to fish the same places that some of the people that we envy and idol and, I dare say worship, some people, these top anglers that they're fishing on and they feed off of that desire in the same way bass knows they're going to get those people to fish 9 events in the Northern Opens because of they're going to feed off people's desire. Okay. The dangling fruit out there of the Bassmaster Classic that everybody and his brother would want to fish in. Okay. For a shot to win that thing. So they just dangle that, right? Dangling it, right? And so they know they can raise it to 2,500 and people are still going to fish. Hobie could probably raise, and I think they should. I think Hobie should raise it to $300. Hate on me all you want. You want a bigger payout? Right? Support the organization. Raise it from 265 to 300 and increase the payout. I don't think very many people would object in Hobie that I've talked to myself. They want to see that payout get up above on the events. Obviously, OC is pretty stellar, but like on the average events every month, increase that by 20-25%. Then you're really making some noise. But anglers have to step up. People like me have to fish them, okay? And not just jackpot a local event. I got to look at myself in the mirror and be like, look, I want to jackpot Potomac River. I've got 2 events on the Potomac as a co-angler before the KBF event scheduled for the Potomac River this year. Do I just want to jackpot that, be one event, throw my hat in the ring, fish it from a kayak, see where it goes, see if I can finish, whatever? Or do you actually want to support your actual trail for more than one event? Okay? Or understand that, look, we're going to ask more of a commitment from people. We understand we may drop from 200 to 175 because some people may not want to pay the extra, $40. But that $40 from the 175 is going to make up, a lot of that anyway. And you have less kayaks on the water competing for more money. That's just my take. Like, again, no one asks me, no one consults me. I'm just a schmuck on YouTube. I just speak my mind and lay it out there for people to get people to talk. That's what this channel is about. People just have not. There are people that just can't get that into their heads. That my channel is a fishing channel, all things fishing, things that I'm passionate about, but it's also to get people to critically think. I don't always believe everything that I say, mates. Sometimes it is clickbait. Sometimes it is to get you to think about something differently. To just kind of like, oh, whoa, what the hell is that guy talking about? And a lot of it is that. 25% of it is, I may not think what I'm saying. To think about something differently to come to a conclusion that may benefit the community. And I think, personally, on this score, I actually do think that Hobie should raise it to 300. I do. I think the people, the quality of the angler and the quality of people in that organization, I believe those people would support 300 and understand why the organization is going to 300. It's to increase payout. It's not to put money in their back pocket. I've never gotten that impression. They've been pretty good with their payouts. Like I said, they take in $53,000 per event if they max out their cap at the current level, and then go look at their payouts all the way down the list. I think it's 12 or 15. I can't remember what it was. Just go look at it. I mean, they do a pretty good job. And then go look at Bass, 71% payout. MLF, 82% payout. Unfortunately, I don't know what Chad's payout is for KBF, but I think it's right up there, 80-some%, when it's all said and done. Especially now going back down to 9 events and consolidating operations and not having as much expenses, not having to send people all over the country to do all that stuff for 17 events, right? Or hotel rooms, all that kind of stuff. 9 events. I bet it's 80-some%. So, that's where it. The last thing really quickly, because we're going to wrap it up here. This is the weekly update for this 1 hour weekly update. Is drone permits. Okay. Yes. In our region, if you're in Virginia, you cannot fly a drone at a state park and all that kind of stuff without a permit. You need to go through DCR, not DNR or DWR. Okay. That ain't their purview. You need to go through DCR to get approval to drone an event. There's an event on Lake Frederick in November. I'm not sure with a special permit that may or may not come in. I'm learning the process here because of things we have planned for next year. I really didn't have any intention of doing anything this year. It was all predicated on next year, and making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's crossed for some of these scheduled events. Because our real estate people are allowed to take drone footage, it's seemingly, because they have it all over their pages for houses and stuff on the river and on these lakes and stuff. A lot of that comes from the commercial side. And if you're a business, if you're commercial, you can get a special use permit for these things, for these events to do that. If you're just an individual, they're not going to give you a permit. So that's a process that's being undertaken now for next year. So commercial drone pilot's license, having individual that has their commercial pilot's license, obviously that or should know that about drones. If you're flying a drone without that in certain areas like near dams on the Susquehanna and places like that, you are running the risk of getting pinched and getting arrested and getting fined in upwards of $2,000-$3,000. Okay. So keep that in mind. If you're in our region, you got to find out. Because everyone's all different. So I think that wraps it up. We talked about the walleye boaters, first boat, not both. One of the boats have been seized by Ohio's Wildlife and Mercer County. We talked about the drone permits. We talked about bass and MLF, the MLF team series. That'll be on TV. It's already been filmed. Should be on TV end of December, early January. We talked about the KBF National Championship. Deadline is in 2 days, October 14th. We talked about the Kayak Kentucky Lake Eat. Guys, you want to check out in Benton and in Paris. And we have talked about the Bass Open and MLF Invitational happenings so far. Once these anglers, I will tell you this, once these anglers begin to report both, NPFL, both happen, I'll make sure that I get that together and present that to give people kind of an idea of who's jumping ship, who's staying with Bass, who's leaving MLF, who's going to Bass, who's making all of those things. The new kayak trails popping up, the new kayak team series, kayak fishing team series or kayak fishing team league, all of those things popping up for next year. Changes, schedule drops. We've got a local schedule drop already. Yackers for Smallies is already dropped. That's a very unique schedule, by the way. I'll do a separate video on that. Hopefully I can get Dale in to just explain the series. And it's a unique, I've never seen anything like this. Okay. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. Cliffhanger. I've never seen a schedule like this in terms of the flexibility. Okay. Like in terms of a scheduled series, not like a monthly. Okay. Or something like that. So incredibly interesting. So check that out when it comes. Make sure you check. Thank you so much for watching this replay. I know I've done this while most of you are at work, so you have to watch the replay. If you have any questions, you can always message me, JL Scott Fishing and Eats, or comment on just comment on one of the most recent posts on the page. If you have a question, I'll get back to you. Join the group. It's a private group. We have exchanges and dialogues. We also have private Zoom calls, private sessions, private streams, where people just come together and exchange their ideas. bait makers come together, talk about bait making. You can find those on TikTok a lot. We'll do joint TikTok streams. Okay. Which reminds me, go on Willamette Weapon Lures, Brian Chapman, Willamette Weapon Lures on TikTok. Get him to 1,000 so he then can join the group live. While we've got 4, we can stream them 4 doing all their bait making and talking about bait making and how they do it and why they do it and what they have available and what they can do and all of those things. So it's awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. All right, mates. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday, and I'll see you on the other side.